On April 26, 1986, an accident occurred at Chernobyl's fourth nuclear power station within the Soviet Union. The event would later become infamously known as the Chernobyl explosion, one of the worst nuclear disasters ever recorded, and is attributed with the highest level of safety significance on the international nuclear event scale. Chernobyl released 400 times more radioactive material than the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima during World War II. The radiation covered approximately 38,000 miles, reaching as far north as Sweden and Finland. Now, 30 years later, this project aims to detail the effects of the radiation on Chernobyl's environment. This includes the effects of radiation on Chernobyl's nearby river and reservoir, the wormwood forest that surrounds Chernobyl, and the animals at all levels of the trophic system. A journal published by Science Direct in 1995 and written by L. Khrushchev studied the effects of radiation on the bodies of water surrounding Chernobyl, such as the Chernobyl cooling pond, the Pripyat River, and the Dnieper Cascade reservoirs. By studying the radioactive contamination of the Chernobyl cooling pond, Khrushchev found that the levels of caesium, an extremely radioactive metal and a byproduct of nuclear waste, was 3 to 10 times higher in predatory fish than non-predatory fish, which has led to a decreased population among the predatory fish. Khrushchev also analyzes the effects of radiation within the Baltic Sea, which again has targeted predatory fish such as the perch, which contain caesium levels 2 to 5 times higher than non-predatory fish. The paper concludes that even though most of the radioactive materials decayed rapidly in the first weeks after the explosion, the levels of caesium have remained large due to the aquatic food chain, which has led to high levels of caesium in fish as far away as Scandinavia and Germany. Weeks following the Chernobyl disaster, much of the surrounding flora and fauna had died due to the large doses of radiation released by the reactor. The Wormwood Forest, a 4-mile area surrounding Chernobyl, was one of the first areas to become heavily affected by the radioactive fallout. The conifers that made up the forest absorbed so much radiation that the trees turned red and later died, giving it the name the Red Forest. Chernobyl workers later tried to bury the radioactive trees in order to help the forest grow back, which had the unforeseen consequence of contaminating the local groundwater. Today, the trees that grew back have deformities related to the radiation that occurred 30 years ago. Such examples include enlargement of the plants and trees, and radiomorphism, which stunts the growth of the trees and causes them to resemble bushes. The effect on animals, however, was just as severe. Many of the animals in the surrounding area died or were later unable to reproduce, leading to a decline in the overall population. Many of the cattle left behind after the Chernobyl explosion died because the radiation had destroyed their thyroid glands and left the surviving cattle stunted due to the lasting damage. The effects of radiation after the Chernobyl explosion are still relevant today. In 2010, 1,000 wild boars in Germany were found contaminated above safe levels of radiation, which was attributed to the fallout from Chernobyl. Similar cases of contaminated livestock have occurred in Norway as recent as 2012. In addition to this, scientists have found a reduced abundance of insects and spiders within the Chernobyl area, which is linked to the contamination of soil that many of the invertebrates live and lay eggs. It is predicted that the decreased levels of invertebrates can hinder the ability for plants to pollinate and for predation to occur, both of which are considered important ecosystem services. One of the most famous examples of animals affected by radiation within Chernobyl is the barn swallow. These birds can be found in many countries, including Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas, which makes them an ideal subject to study. An article from Wired in 2011 titled, "Is Chernobyl a Wild Kingdom or Radioactive Den of Decay?" follows a pair of scientists who have been sent to study the effects of radiation on the population of barn swallows. These birds were chosen because they were easy to catch for research, and their populations were able to be tracked over time. By studying the birds, the scientists found that the barn swallows commonly had more deformities than other swallows from outside Chernobyl, such as deformed beaks, eyes, tumors, damaged toes, asymmetrical tails, along with high rates of dead or deformed sperm in the birds' nesting areas. These deformities, caused by increased radiation from the accident, led to an overall decline in population. However, in spite of these changes, it seems as though the environment of Chernobyl is steadily recovering. Many news sources, from National Geographic to BBC, have reported in recent years that nature has begun to retake Chernobyl in ways that it had not before. The decrease in radiation has allowed the populations of the native plants and animals to increase, partly due to the migration of plants and animals from outside areas into Chernobyl. The increase in migration has also led to a number of endangered species taking refuge within Chernobyl, allowing them to repopulate. These events have led to an increase in overall diversity, and Chernobyl has been hailed as one of Europe's richest wildlife habitats. The environmental damages to Chernobyl are twofold, short and long-term. After the accident, the immediate radiation led to a sharp decrease in wildlife and vegetation, effectively turning the area into a barren wasteland. However, giving the environment time to recover from the perturbation of the radiation allowed for a rebirth and adaptation to the new conditions. While many of the flora and fauna indigenous to the area are still being affected by the residual radiation, an increase of outside influence has allowed Chernobyl to flourish into a more diverse environment than it was before the incident in 1986.